Watch design always fascinates me. One day we're talking about horology, the next day dress watches, and on a day like today, a monster. The Seiko Monster is a watch that divides the community, but especially those in the Seiko community. The watch is not as old as some of its icons like the SKX, the Turtle, or the Tuna. It's not as conservative either, but it has fast become one of the most popular watches of the brand's current generation of pieces, so it is well worth investigating why people find this watch appealing, or on the other side of the spectrum, why it doesn't catch their interest. You can solve the riddle by asking two main questions. What do you look for in a dive watch? And why do you choose a Seiko dive watch? The answer may be different for many people, but dive watches are rugged, dependable, durable, legible, waterproof. The list goes on. Say what you like about them, they are some of the greatest watches of our time. Most of our lives nowadays are dependent on watches that do not need maintenance, that are easy to use and to read. It also helps to have an added external feature to the watch that is not complication dependent, which is why a dive bezel is often appreciated. As a society, we seek simplicity and practicality with all of the products we own and use on a daily basis, and the average person doesn't require a piece of jewelry so much as something functional to use. So dive watches are gravitated towards because they offer the charm of something mechanical, but are equally as good when being used in less forgiving conditions. They have dials that glow in the dark, they can take a hit and still look good afterwards. Again, the pros about them are endless. Dive watches are essentially the watches that have become the integral utility for the majority, and the appeal of Seiko dive watches is that they have a history. They are basic, utilitarian, affordable, and reliable. So putting everything together, affordability, quality build, and reliability gives you a great watch, and it being a dependable diver helps even more. It makes for an excellent daily beater. But the Seiko Monster adds something else. It's by no means a typical dive watch. It's not trying to be something that would work well with a suit or a formal occasion. It is raw masculinity, testosterone-filled aggression. It looks like the kind of watch that would still be working after being subjected to an explosion. And that is what gives it a draw. Over-engineering is a popular aesthetic to adopt in our industry. It visually shows the consumer that the product is solid and that it can be relied upon. To someone in the design profession, over-engineering is something that is frowned at in most situations. The excessiveness is wasteful and unimportant to some of the finer products that don't need it. But it is an aesthetic that works perfectly for tools and is required because they need to not only prove that they can get the job done visually, but also need to perform at their peak and last for years. This watch, with all of its bravado, looks to be like one of those tools. A heavy-duty Leatherman is what springs to mind at first. It is so rugged, it looks dangerous, and that is an aesthetic that we seldom see with watches nowadays. The overbuilt tool watch genre mainly focuses on size increase, and not so much on the aesthetics. On the exterior, what draws my attention first is the bezel, the knurling, the grooves, the semicircular cuts. It visually communicates that it is easy to turn. It's actually so inviting. Whenever you ever had a bezel seem like it's inviting you to turn it. Huge points on that detail, and guaranteed that it would be able to turn in almost any situation. Over-engineering can be greatly beneficial in this instance because we all know how hard it is to turn a bezel on some watches when we need them the most. And then the welcoming feature, but also the most polarizing aspect of the watch. I believe this layout is associated with the older generations of the Monster, but the plots on the dial. The shark teeth-like plots that give the watch its name. The impression it gives me at first is it's the mouth of a monster that is wide open, and it is excellent visual storytelling. I so wish that more brands were as adventurous with approaches like this, because the layout by no means defaces or ridicules the design of the watch. It accentuates it, emphasizes the name. Complete with the orange dial, it's just a winner. A pure overbuilt tool watch with anger and masculinity as its foundation. The hour hand is another aspect that really needs attention. Broad, simple, and so legible. I have to ask why more handsets like these aren't found on other watches in the Swiss category. And the dials on these pieces are so neatly laid out. The elements look integrated. An excellent use of space and proportions, helped greatly by the extended minute track. The amount of options and configurations for this watch is endless, as I'm sure you have seen by now. But the aesthetic of the watch is geared for a certain type of person, and that is why it is not as popular as the safer models. So does this watch do everything right? Of course not. Nothing does. Could this be someone's only watch? I don't think so. It feels like the sort of watch more built for an enthusiast who has a handful of other pieces in their collection. Design-wise, as a package, It offers something unique. And the only gripes I have with the watch are again attributed to the day-date complication that is a part of Seiko's movement. It's just a feature that has never appealed to me on any of their watches, and it's something I always point out. The watch does look incredible without a date, as you are seeing in the quick edit, or possibly having a cutout for the date complication within the index itself. That's also something interesting. The only other gripe I have, and this is surprising because I always praise this aspect of Seiko, is the typeface used on the bezel. It doesn't seem to gel with the watch. It feels a little dated, like the font that would be used in the 90s. The way the bracelet has been integrated with the case is also strange, with a much more vintage approach and no end links. We have seen a fair amount of changes with the watches over time though, and now the models have a Prospex logo on the dial and uses some gorgeous color combinations. So returning to the original question, the Seiko Monster, should it be loved, hated or feared? Design speaking, I see it as something that rides the line of being both fun and serious. The older generations especially have a character to them. The orange dial is the one that catches my attention the most because it just exemplifies what the watch is trying to be. And the Monster very literally communicates overbuilt excess, which is why it doesn't appeal to everyone. It's not a watch that is trying to show finesse or neatness, but is very much a tool, built for a purpose. The devotees will always find enjoyment with watches like these, and as we are aware, there is a great market for them. The likes of kayakers and mountain climbers who rely on rugged objects shouldn't pass this watch up. And in the end, the Seiko Monster is one of their line that really is a caricature. And considering the innumerable other names and watches on the market nowadays, all trying to fall in line and be as casual and underexpressive as possible, a bit more life on a dial is a welcome change.